tape is rolling.
All right. My name's Marilyn Lysohir, and I'm from Moscow, Idaho. And I'm very happy to be at the Missoula Museum of Art showing Good Girls 1968. And what that is it's a show of all the girls that I graduated from high school with in 1968. There were 163 of them. The show, I started with the A's in the yearbook, and then I worked my way through the yearbook to do the 163 heads. And in fact, this is an example of a page in the yearbook, and this is what I had to work with, is that little 2-inch by 2-inch picture. And I took that picture and then I made the 3-dimensional sculpture out of that. During 1968, it was really an interesting year in the history of the United States. I think that a lot of things were changing. There was the Vietnam War going on, politics. We had some assassinations, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy. The fashion was changing rapidly. There was a cultural revolution going on. And when you look at the heads, you can see some of the girls still have that old-fashioned bouffant hairdo that was about this high, and in those days glasses were, there's someone up here, were just very heavy, thick plastic and black. That was it. That's the color that you got in 1968. And I really enjoyed looking at all those different attributes that the girls had. The hair, what were they wearing? Did they have a little piece of jewelry? There were so many different outfits that the girls were wearing that some of them just were really fun to do. Like here's a paisley that was in fabric. There's a couple girls that have madras, and that was it was something that was really popular back then. So you can see the fashion in those days were either the sweater with the little necklace, or a shirt with a sweater. Some of them are very unusual what they wore. That was kind of fun to get someone that had an unusual sweater or an unusual shirt on. When I was doing the piece, I would look at the photo and then I'd remember, did I know this person? Was this a friend? Or had I ever spoken to this person? And some of them I hadn't ever talked to, and I thought, boy, if I could do high school all over again, I would make a point of just talking to each person, just to find out who they are, what they're interested in. A lot of people have asked me, why did I only do girls? Why didn't I do the guys too? And I always say, well, the guys were naughty and the girls were all good. But in reality, I wanted to do the girls to honor them, because back in 1968, there wasn't the opportunities that the guys had. You had basically future teachers, future homemakers, future nurses. So it was a time that I felt that these girls that I did, a lot of them had hopes and they had fears and they had dreams, and it was a little harder back then to have the confidence that yes, I can do that. I could become a rocket scientist if I want, or an engineer, or and we have in here in this group, we have lawyers, we have opera singers, we have publishers, an editor for Time Life magazines, we have mothers, we have women that never married, that that had a career. A lot of them worked in factories, and I found all this out when I went to the 40th class reunion back in the summer of 2008. So I got to see as many girls as I ever will get to see from this piece showed up, and got to see. We brought the piece back to Sharon, Pennsylvania, and we had about 160 some people show up for the reunion, and It was just a very nice experience to see the girls again, and they were very excited to see themselves portrayed in clay. When I was making the pieces, I got to the R's, and I realized one of the girls that I was doing was a very good friend that I had in high school, but I had lost contact with her for 30 some years. And so I found her. I did some investigating, called numbers, found family members, and finally got a number for her. And when I did, it was just a great reunion over the phone. And I asked her if she would send me some information on her, a photo, an update, and then I started to call as many girls as I could find. And I was eventually able to get 50 girls to send back information, a photo, and some information on, what they had done in the last 40 years. And a lot of them were, moms and grandmas already, and these become very important to the piece. And I didn't know that at the time when I was making the heads. I was really dedicated to making each of the heads, but I realized that I needed these updates so that when you come in to see the piece, you can see what these young women at 17, what it became of them in their late 50s. When I was doing the pieces, if I did not know the girl at all, there was no emotional baggage that went with the portrait, and I could look at the portrait and do the portrait. I had a book that was a directory, and I would look up the names if I could find them and find out what had become of them. Where did they live? Did they have children? And those portraits I think were easier to do because I was just looking at the physical attributes of that photo. People that I knew that were friends, it was a little harder because I was trying so hard to make sure that they looked like the picture in the book, and so I found that those tended to be a little harder for me to do, the people that I knew better. So it's an interesting exercise to do 163 heads, and I had a generic model that I made, and I made a plaster mold of that, and then I put the clay in that mold, and then when that head came out, they all looked exactly alike when I first started, and then I started to look at the pictures, and then I started to put the features in, and the hair, and what outfit they had on. And there's just certain ones that were a little harder, and I think the ones that were the ones that I actually knew. This is a very interesting one right here, Mary Reynolds. And Mary was the girl that I met back in about 2000, right before I started the piece. I started the piece in 2003. And I had an idea that I wanted to do portraits of girls or women. And in 2000, I was watching my parents' home in Pennsylvania for them, and late at night I went out to get them some gas in their car. And I was at the gas station, and Mary recognized me. I heard my name, and I looked around, and there was this woman that I didn't recognize, but she recognized me and said how much she looked up to me in high school, and I asked her what she was doing now and all that. And when I got back home, I found my yearbook, and I looked it up, and sure enough, I remembered her then. Her name was Mary Reynolds, and she was in the band, and I happened to be the majorette, one of the majorettes in the band, so that's how she really remembered me. And she had a twin sister by the name of Nora Reynolds, which is way up there, but you can see they both had very different styles. Mary had the bangs and in a bow, and Nora was her hair was pulled back. These are made out of clay, and the clay is a low-fire white body. By that I mean that it's fired at a lower temperature. It's not a porcelain. A porcelain is fired at a very high temperature, and this is fired at a much lower temperature. And the colorants are stains that are ceramic stains that you paint on, and then when you fire, they actually fire onto the surface. You can't wipe them off or wash them off. And there's a little bit of glaze, shiny glaze on the lips, and in the eyes, on the whites of the eyes, just a little bit of a gloss to give some meaning to that part. The bases are I threw this on the potter's wheel, and then hand built the form to have a head and a plain body. And then that mold then is, the one mold that I had is what I put the clay into, and that made each of these pieces started off looking exactly alike, and then I would pull in the character of each of those photos. These are plaster. They're called a corbel, and they're an architectural shelving unit, and they are, I was able to find them in Mexico. They're a company down there that made them. So I ordered over 180 some of these, but they work really well to house the actual ceramic sculpture on them. And because they're exactly the same, they make it a lot easier to display them. Gives a cohesiveness to the display. Beautiful job. The museum did an absolutely amazing job of putting these up, and I love the light pink background for them. And the architecture of the museum is such that the corbels and the heads, it's just a beautiful space to show in with the columns and the everything in the space. The heads, I just feel, are really enhanced by the space.